What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of BR's Draft Board presented by Snickers Ice Cream. I'm Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, and it's draft week. We finally made it. This is the final edition of BR Draft Board that I am doing for you guys this draft season, and what a fun journey it has been to get to this point. So much scouting, so much this and that, this player fitting with this team, all the different types of scenarios, which leads us to today's episode where I am going to give you my final predictive mock draft for the 2025 NFL draft. You've heard a lot of what I think of these prospects, but now I'm going to try to tell you what I think is going to happen on Thursday night as we run through a full first round mock draft here on the show. Let's get it kicked off. We've got to. I'm using the PFF mock draft simulator. You guys can use the PFF mock draft simulator at home over at pff.com/mock. If you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one now for 20% off, 25% off using the promo code DRAFT25. So just want to let you guys know that as we go through this exercise together, starting at number 1 to kick us off. I got to go chalk. Sorry. It's what I think is going to happen. There's a reason why Cam Ward is minus 20,000 in the betting odds to go number 1 overall. It's because I think a lot of people just know that he is going to go number 1 overall. The Tennessee Titans don't have another option at quarterback. They need one. Cam Ward feels like very much consensus that if you need a quarterback in this class, he's the guy that you would want to go with. So Titans don't really have a lot of other options here. I've heard that they have gotten plenty of calls about teams trading up to number 1 overall. I'm sure those two teams right behind him in the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants have been two of those teams trying to do that. But in my opinion, it will be to no avail. The Tennessee Titans are going to stick at number 1. They are going to take Cam Ward. You can see his prospect profile right there, some of the PFF numbers that we have there from him. So we got Cam Ward going number 1 overall. Number 2, they say the draft starts at 2. I'm not so sure it does because I actually think this one's pretty easy. And I think Cleveland thinks it's pretty easy as well. If they can't trade up to number 1, I think they're going to take Travis Hunter, the phenom from Colorado, who could play cornerback and wide receiver for them. It sure sounds like wide receiver is the most likely path for them. But look, anytime you're comparing a guy to Shohei Ohtani, which Andrew Berry, their general manager, did just a couple of days ago, you know that they're certainly going to give you a chance to be able to play both spots. You can see some of his numbers there on the screen. And look, I don't think it's feasible to say that Travis Hunter is going to play both sides of the ball his entire career. Maybe 3, 4, 5 years to start his career. You might be able to do that, but that's just a lot of wear and tear on your body at the NFL level. So even if it's just a rookie contract, I do still think they're going to be able to get the best of both worlds, if you will, from Travis Hunter. I think he is an immediate starting wide receiver, maybe even their wide receiver 1 over Jerry Jeudy. And then on the other side of things, they don't need him to be corner 1. They already have Denzel Ward for that, but some trade talks with Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, could they upgrade from that outside CB spot? I think he could come in and play opposite Denzel Ward, especially if it means that he's not covering those number 1 receivers in the NFL week in and week out. You can see the film right in front of you on the screen, what he can do as a wide receiver, how easily he gets open, those ball skills, that athleticism, it's all there for them. I think the Cleveland Browns see that as well. So Travis Hunter, number 2 overall. Number 3 overall, I don't have to look at my notes for any of this because I think it's pretty dang easy. Abdul Carter to the New York Giants. It has to be. I think there's 3 blue chip players in this class. One of them's Travis Hunter. The other one's Abdul Carter. And I would say the third one, which we'll get to in a little bit here, is Ashton Jeanty. In a class where there's a lot of preference, and they say that the difference isn't that big between, say, prospect number 5 and prospect number 20, and then in the next tier, maybe prospect number 21 all the way to prospect number 60. There might not be a big difference within those 2 tiers and within those 2 groups, but I'll tell you where there is a difference between those 3 guys, Abdul Carter included, and the rest of this draft. The Giants have a lot of options. They would love a quarterback, but if they can't get one, if they don't feel comfortable with Shedeur Sanders, which I don't think they're going to, they've done more work on Shedeur than basically anybody. And the fact that we haven't heard that it would be a consensus pick for them at number 3 tells me that I don't think it's going to happen. So instead, you could entertain trading down, but I don't like that option either. Because if you trade down, you might have to look at this guy be a multi-Pro Bowler and a multi-All-Pro player for you. You had the chance to take him, and you decided to trade down. I just don't think the Giants can afford to do that, especially with some of the misses that they've had in the draft over the last couple of years. Stick at number 3, take the player who is one of the few blue-chip players in this class in Abdul Carter, and you're hoping that you get Micah Parsons 2.0 here with the Giants at number 3. Number 4, there's been some speculation of, okay, what are the Patriots going to do to surround Drake May with all the talent that he needs? Ultimately, I think it is going to be Will Campbell. That does seem to be where everybody is leaning. Here we are 2 days until night one of the NFL draft. I think it's going to be offensive line. I think it's going to be between Will Campbell and Armand Membou. I think if you ask most people, they would tell you, myself included, I have Will Campbell as the best offensive lineman in this draft. Now, does that mean that he's going to be a long-term tackle, a long-term guard? Some people go, man, if he's a guard and you're drafting him at 4, that's way overvalued. But again, you have to take the class as it comes to you. You're not picking Will Campbell over Joe Alt from last year. You're not picking him over Rashawn Slater or Tristan Wirfs or Penei Sewell. Those guys aren't in this class. You're picking him versus his peers, and you're picking a player who you're hoping can really improve your offensive line moving forward. He absolutely is going to do that for you, whether he is at tackle or at guard. He's a player who I would let him fail at tackle, if you will, before I moved him inside to guard, but I think the Patriots are going to like the type of player that Will Campbell is, especially the way that he carries himself and his high football IQ, something they will gravitate towards. The Jacksonville Jaguars are where things start to get fun, right? Adam Schefter said earlier this week that he has heard the Jaguars are a, quote, wild card. I've had them going Mason Graham in my previous mocks, but I'm actually going to switch it up here. In my final predictive mock here on BR Draft Board, I'm going to say they take wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan, which is music to my ears, because I feel like I've been taking crazy pills this whole draft, caping for Tet McMillan, watching the tape, watching him dominate over the last 2 years, over 1,300 and 1,400 yards, so many touchdowns, so many catches, the emphasis in that offense, and people are trying to nitpick and tell me he's not that good of a receiver. I know what I'm watching. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars can too. He reminds you a little bit of a guy like Mike Evans. Now, Mike Evans had an unbelievable NFL career, and so it takes a lot of hard work, takes some injury luck, because Mike Evans really hasn't been beat up, and he's had some good offenses that he has worked in during his career in Tampa Bay as that consistent 1,000-yard receiver. But production aside, Liam Cohen's coming over from Tampa Bay. He knows what it's like to utilize a player who is built like this, who has this similar type of talent mold. And I think he'd know exactly how to use Tetairoa McMillan. And so to help out Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. get the most out of that duo, you can add another great wide receiver to the list. So let's go Tetairoa McMillan here at number 5. Number 6, I am going to stick a little bit with chalk, and the fact that Ashton Jeanty makes it to number 6, and I kind of feel like sometimes I have to say makes it to number 6, is one of the blue chip prospects. I'm going to have him going off the board with the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete Carroll and John Spytek are having a ball, aren't they? They're sitting up there. They're trying to throw every single curveball they possibly can. They're trying to be way too obvious, right? John Spytek has talked about how, I think it was his kid who said, boy, if you don't come away with Ashton Jeanty, like, I'm going to be mad at you, Dad. And he's saying this at press conferences. You know, you got Pete Carroll up there at the pre-draft press conference. Somebody asked him about Ashton Jeanty, and he whispers in the mic, as if Pete Carroll doesn't know he's got a mic in front of him, and says, hold on, be careful. You don't want to talk too much about Ashton Jeanty. As if he's letting the cat out of the bag, and we don't know who this guy is. Like, we didn't watch him rush for over 2,500 yards this past season. I think it's too good to pass up here. He's not, from all accounts, he's not just a great player, but he's also a great person. He's the kind of person that you would want to build your franchise around, somebody that could be an absolute fan favorite like we know running backs can be. And so at number 6 overall, I'm going to have the Las Vegas Raiders taking one of the top offensive players in the class, positional value be damned, in Ashton Jeanty. Jets at number 7. No Tetairoa McMillan here. Mason Graham is here, which is tempting because normally he's not in mock draft formats. I still think the Jets stick with offensive line and Armand Membou. I think that he is going to be the pick for them there. I think they're going to try to solidify that offensive line to be as good as it possibly can be. Aaron Glenn's coming over from Detroit, and he watched what that offensive line meant to that team, and how Ben Johnson was able to put up so many points in the offensive line was a big reason why. So if they have one hole in the offensive line, which it feels like they really only have one, they can fill it with a prospect who's really damn good and someone who gets to step into his natural position. There's no flipping from right to left side or anything like that. This guy was an elite grader at PFF. He was, I believe, the only offensive lineman in the draft who had an 85 and above run blocking grade as well as pass blocking grade. So he is very well rounded. And again, you see on the screen, playing that right tackle spot. He is natural at being able to do that. And he could step in right away from the Jets to play that position. So number 7, I'm going to have Armand Membou going off the board here to the New York Jets. It puts the Carolina Panthers on the board at number 8. I think the Panthers are going to lean defense, right? I think that that's where a lot of people are leaning for them. But the question is, who? Again, Mason Graham's on the board. Shamar Stewart's on the board. We've heard those types of players. You got both the corners on the board too, if you feel good about that. Ultimately, The more I talk to people, the more it feels like the vibes are leaning towards Jalen Walker, the hybrid edge slash linebacker from Georgia. So that's where I'm going to go here. I'm going to give the Carolina Panthers Jalen Walker. I have my worries about him as a prospect. I wonder if he is instinctual and can move side to side and retreat in deep coverage well enough to play off-ball linebacker. And I also wonder if you want him to blitz, if you want him to be an edge rusher, is he built like it, the way that you want? He doesn't exactly have the length, the height. He is lacking in those areas for being a full-time edge rusher, but he has that explosiveness to him. He's got a motor that runs 1,000,000 miles an hour, runs hot at all times. And from all accounts, his dad's a former defensive coordinator throughout college football. He's grown up around the game. Very, very high football character, high football IQ. I think that Carolina probably looks at this situation similarly to when they had Luke Kuechly, right? And they just had a rock in the middle of their defense who could do a lot of different things for them and be a big-time playmaker. You see his numbers there on the screen as well. And so I'm going to have Carolina take a Jalen Walker because that is what I've heard the most for them at number 8. Number 9. This is where I will have Mason Graham coming off the board. His slide stops here with the New Orleans Saints. Again, a spot potentially for Shedeur Sanders, but I am not convinced that they're taking Shedeur Sanders at number 9. They could, but I wonder if some of this quarterback smoke and some of the injury concerns with Derek Carr, it was a shoulder injury. I believe that he suffered in 2023, and it really didn't bother him too much in 2024. So what's to say that it would keep him from playing the whole season in 2025 and beyond? It feels as though they might be putting this news out there to say, hey, somebody else draft Shedeur Sanders in front of us because we want one of these good defensive players to be able to fall. Here they do, and it is Mason Graham that they would be able to pick here. They've got guys like Brian Brzee in the middle. They brought in Devon Gottschalk, but it just has not been good enough along that defensive line for New Orleans. I think it's aging, and even the younger guys that they brought in there have not played to their potential the way that they have needed them to. So Mason Graham is somebody that absolutely has elite run defense grades in each of the last 2 seasons. Low sack total, but he is somebody who, man, when you watch this Michigan defense, you can tell that the offensive teams that went up against them, especially this past year, they're getting the ball out of the hands of their quarterback extremely fast. So he's got a decent pass rush win rate to him, lower sack total, but it's not like he can't win as a pass rusher. We have seen him be able to do so. The short arms, of course, are something that you have to think about here, but it does not change the tape. It does not change how good this guy is and how impactful he has been for Michigan over the last 2 years. Somebody that Jim Harbaugh called a gift from the football gods, both him and Kenneth Grant. Anytime you get a real football mind like Jim Harbaugh was saying that, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to listen. 10 Chicago Bears. No Action Genty in this spot. I'm not entertaining offensive line with Will Campbell and Armand Membu off the board. Instead, I'm going to go with Tyler Warren, somebody who, when we listened to Ben Johnson talk when he was at the NFL owners meetings, he said that he asked new defensive coordinator Dennis Allen about Tyler Warren and said, what does a player like this do for you, right? How would you defend a player like this? And he said that Dennis Allen said back to him, it just puts such a stress on the defense and the defensive coordinator because you have to account for so many different things a player like this can do. That was Tyler Warren's 2024 season. He could play in line for you. He can play in the slot. He could play as a wingback in the backfield. He's tough to bring down. He loves those yards after contact. He's had monster games for Penn State, especially last season. That USC game is the one that everybody points to. Some tough catches, some big catches, a lot of what you would want to see from a tight end he gave you in 2024. So Chicago Bears, I'm going to have them taking Tyler Warren. He sneaks into the top 10 there at the back end. The San Francisco 49ers, I'll go with defensive line. Mason Graham would have been great for this team, but obviously goes 2 picks earlier. I think Shamar Stewart is somebody that they would look into. Shamar Stewart on the other side of Nick Bosa. It's something that I wonder if they would be debating between Mykel Williams and Shamar Stewart. Ultimately, I feel like this is a team that would like to bet on the overall size and explosiveness scores of Shamar Stewart and Robert Saleh, that 4-down defensive front. He could just say, man, give me this dude and I will develop him as a pass rusher. So it's very alluring, what this guy can do. He hasn't really put it all together quite yet as a pass rusher, but the pass rush win percentage, I will say, over the last 2 years, right around 12% 2 years ago, right around 15% 2 years ago, and then 12% this past year. Those are higher marks than you would expect for a player who just had a sack and a half in each of the last 3 seasons. So I think the sacks sort of lie to you a little bit. I think that pass rush win percentage a little bit more of a hint as to what he can do with his abilities. But I'll have Shamar Stewart going to the Niners there at number 11. Mykel Williams, like I said, I debated him there at number 11. I'll have him go off the board here to the Cowboys at number 12. Now, I know that they could go wide receiver. If Ted McMillan was on the board, I think this certainly could be an option. They could go Matthew Golden from Texas if they believe that he is a wide receiver, is a great complement to CeeDee Lamb. But ultimately, with Mykel Williams falling, the Dallas Cowboys have to get better on the edges. And specifically, they have to get better at run defense. Those are two things that Mykel Williams could check both of those boxes. And I think the NFL is a lot higher on Williams than I am. I see him as more of a late first, early second round pick just because I don't think he's really ever going to develop into the pass rusher that you want him to be worthy of a pick this high. But I think the Cowboys really need a player like this. They do. And so certainly this could be a wide receiver spot, but ultimately I wanted to get Mykel Williams off the board here because I think the NFL is going to look to draft him in the top 20. I think Dallas could be one of those spots there. 13, Miami Dolphins. I'm going to go safety Nick Emanwari. I really don't know where he's going to go off the board. And to be honest with you, I think he's much more of a mid-day 2 pick than a first-round pick. I would love Nick Emanwari somewhere on the late second round, early third round range. I just get wary of sort of who he is as a prospect. Where are the examples of guys who are built like him, who have similar descriptions going into the NFL? Isaiah Simmons, Obi Melifonwu, those guys didn't work out. Jeremy Chin, he's still in the league, he's on his third team now already, and he hasn't really found that home base. And he's not really a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's not Kyle Hamilton. So I get a little bit wary of Nick Emanwari. But the fact of the matter is, the Miami Dolphins need safety badly. They love team speed, especially when you could bring some size with it. And so if this is a team that's moving on from Jalen Ramsey, they certainly need corner, but they can get corner a little bit later. If they feel like this dude is truly an alien, I mean, look at that closing athleticism. When he sees it, when he anticipates it, I mean, the recovery speed is fantastic. You see some of his biggest plays from the past season. It's all there. Miami is really a wild card team. They have a lot of different needs: interior offensive line, interior defensive line, in the secondary, safety, corner, maybe long-term at wide receiver. They have a lot of needs. I don't know what direction they're going to go, but I feel as though Nick Emanwari could be their type there. So I have him go off the board there at number 13. 14, couldn't be easier. If Colston Loveland from Michigan, the tight end, makes it to the Colts at 14, the only reason it takes more than 30 seconds to announce this pick is because the NFL has got to sell commercials. Honestly, that's the only reason why I could think that this pick would take more than however long it takes to write in Colston Loveland's name on the card and hand it to Roger Goodell. It's exactly what the Colts need. It's the last maybe piece of their offense, if you will, that they are missing. I mean, you could not ask for more for either Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, with the receivers to throw to, with the tight end option there now, with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, and with that offensive line in front of you. They might make a couple of offensive line additions, so that certainly could be the case, but they have a major need at tight end. And Colston Loveland, he's more than just a wide receiver. You saw there on that pass play, pound for pound, he's a pretty good blocker himself. And so he's somebody who I think could be the total package for the Indianapolis Colts, and somebody who could be a major part of their offense, even as a rookie. Number 15, the Atlanta Falcons. They could go pass rusher, certainly could, but I do believe that they drafted those guys last year, Ruka Roro, Brandon Dorlus, Braylon Trice, for a reason. I think they believe those guys can be contributing players along their defensive line. Rook was able to show that a little bit last year. Dorlus was hurt, and then as was Braylon Trice. So those guys are really hopefully going to have a fully healthy season this year, and we get to see what they're made of. I am going to go with Will Johnson. And to me, this has got to be my satisfying selection presented by Snickers Ice Cream, because this to me is the most satisfying. It's exactly the type of player that Raheem Morris would want in his defense. So this is my satisfying selection here. I'm going to go with Will Johnson. It's that off-zone cover 3 scheme. That's really what we need. That's really what the Atlanta Falcons need. They need pass rushers, no doubt about it, but that secondary has to be a lot better. So this one, to me, it's a scheme fit. It's perfect. I love what the Falcons would be able to do with A.J. Terrell on one side, with Will Johnson on the other. So that would be my satisfying selection. I mean, we talked about this last week as well. Snickers Ice Cream and Snickers just overall, they've got the Travis Hunter 2-pack as well. So if you order the 2-pack, you get everybody's favorite ice cream, the ice cream bar, but also the famous chocolate bar as well. That's why it's the 2-pack there. And if we wanted to go with the 2-pack here, I'll go one pick earlier. I'll say that would be my two-pack there. The two Michigan guys, Colson Loveland going to the Indianapolis Colts at 14, and then Will Johnson going to the Atlanta Falcons at 15. So that would be my two-pack there. If you want to get your own two-pack, go over to snickers.com/two-pack. You can get that all the way through April 25th. 16, almost halfway through this mock here, Arizona Cardinals. Let's go with Jahdae Barron. Do Jahdae Barron here. I think that this one still makes sense. I think a lot of Cardinals fans, when I don't pick defensive line, they go, come on, like you got to pick I think that they have spent a lot on defensive line. They brought in Josh Sweat. They brought back Calais Campbell. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson. They brought back Baron Browning. They have Darius Robinson as well. Zayvon Collins is still on the team. Like, they have a decent amount. Now, you might be telling me, like, oh, none of those guys are impact players. But again, this is a predictive mock draft. I bet they would love Jahdae Barron. And who he is an off-zone corner in Jonathan Gannon's off-zone coverage scheme. So that to me is a perfect match for them. Now, there are a couple of different pass rushers they could potentially go with, but in my opinion, the drop-off from corner outside of the first round is a lot steeper than a drop-off in interior defensive line and edge rushers. So the Cardinals, if they're forming a full draft strategy, I like them hitting corner the most in the first round. I think they're going to see that as well. And so as a predictive, selection here, I just think he could do it all for them. He could do so many. Jonathan Gannon is going to use Jahdae Barron on the outside. He's going to use him on the inside like he was using 2023 while he was at Texas. So that's sort of the way that I would go if I was the Arizona Cardinals. So all right, before we flip pages to the second half of this mock draft, we recap it a little bit here. For those of you who might have joined a little bit late, Tennessee Titans took Cam Ward at number 1 overall. Again, this is a predictive mock draft, what I think will happen. Travis Hunter at number 2 to the Browns, Abdul Carter to the Giants at 3, Will Campbell to the Patriots at 4, Tetero McMillan to the Jags at number 5, Ashton Genty to the Raiders at 6, Armand Membu to the Jets at 7, Jalen Walker to the Carolina Panthers at 8, Mason Graham to the Saints at number 9, Tyler Warren to the Bears at number 10, Shamar Stewart to the Niners at number 11, Mykel Williams to the Cowboys at 12, Nicky Manwari to the Dolphins at 13, Colson Loveland to the Colts at 14, and then Will Johnson to the Falcons at 15 before we had the pick we just went over, which was Jahdae Barron going to the Arizona Cardinals at number 16. Second half of this mock draft here, we kick things off with the Cincinnati Bengals. A couple of different options where they could go. They could go interior offensive line, interior defensive line. They could go edge rusher, maybe even go safety with Malachi Starks still on the board. I'm going to have him going Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss. There's some rumors that he could, be falling a little bit further down the draft. Maybe you can get him in the 20s. I think he is way too talented to be able to get outside of the top 20, especially in this class. To me, Walter Nolan's not a complete prospect yet, but my goodness, the ceiling is there to absolutely love. He had an elite run defense grade this past season because of just some incredible, not just lower body, but upper body strength. He was great as a penetrating run stopper as well, where you said, okay, you talk about pin your ears back in pass rush. You could do that in run defense as well. You could slant between gaps, and sometimes it's not as much of holding the line of scrimmage, but instead it's run defense by penetration. And man, you just see some of the raw power on some of those plays. He is an NFLer. He really was. And he showcased that this past year. The pass rush win percentage was a little bit lower than you wanted it to be, but this is still somebody that there's too many shades of Jalen Carter there. There really are. I'm not saying he's Jalen Carter. There's a reason why he gets pick 17. He's not quite there yet. He's not as polished as Jalen Carter was in the pass rush category going into the NFL. But there's some of Jalen Carter in there. And for that, I'd take him in the first round. I'd take him top 20. And I'm taking him here to the Bengals and number 17, who in my opinion really need it. Seahawks. This is where we do go interior offensive line. I'm going to go Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. Now, I don't feel as though the Seahawks think they have to take interior offensive line here at number 18, but if the right one falls to them, I think that they'll like it. And I really do think that Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, as well as maybe Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, are two guys that they feel comfortable with taking here at number 18. I don't know exactly how the Seahawks view their interior offensive line. If you ask me, it's very bad. I think they need starters at center. I think they need a starter at right guard, and I think they need a starter at left guard. I don't know if they view their lineup as desperately, but in my opinion, you have this pick here, you have pick 50 in the second round, and you have pick 52. Two of those three picks could very easily be used on interior offensive line, and it wouldn't feel forced. You wouldn't feel like you are reaching heavily for either of these players. So Zabel is how I'm going to start things off here for the Seahawks. If they feel they desperately need an interior offensive line, I think they'll be able to get one, and I think Ray Zabel would be an excellent choice for them. 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My Tampa Bay Buccaneers from just south of Tampa, so grew up a Bucs fan. I'm going to have them taking Donovan Ezraku. I think he's their perfect player this year. I really do. They need linebacker. There's no doubt about it. I think Jahad Campbell could be on the board, although I've heard he could have a shoulder injury that might limit his offseason program, and maybe he'll be ready for training camp. Maybe he won't. I think NFL teams really hate when rookies have to miss time for mini camp, for OTAs, and even into training camp. They really don't like that. So I wonder if Jahad Campbell is going to fall down the board a little bit. Ultimately, I have Tampa passing him up for a pass rusher in Ezraku, who I just think he's just excellent, man. Sophomore year, senior year, incredibly productive. Above 80 run defense grade over the last 3 years. So he's consistent in the early down work as well. He understands the why of pass rushing and why things work, why you execute one move at the beginning of the game to set up another move later in the game. He understands all that. Very high football IQ, motor that's always running hot. He'll do the dirty work, but he'll also give you the flash plays of getting in the backfield, getting sacks and tackles for loss like we saw this past season. That's something that Tampa needs. They need a one-on-one winner on the opposite side of Yaya Diaby. So I have Ezraku going off the board there at number 19. Number 20, the Denver Broncos. I go back and forth with this one. Ultimately, I do think that they would take Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina, if the board shakes out like this, and if they are not moving up in this draft, which it's been reported that they're looking to move up and could get aggressive here. I don't think it'd be for Hampton. If you're trading up, I think it would be maybe for Tetron McMillan, maybe for Colson Loveland, somebody like that. Maybe if they really wanted an interior defensive lineman to get in ahead of some interior defensive line needs that they might have next year, a more long-term approach, and somebody that maybe could contribute for them this year. But if they're sticking at number 20 and Omarion Hampton makes it to them, I think they'll want this here. They really need somebody who could be a bell cow type of back for them that they could lean on in all situations. Hampton gives you 3-down ability. The only question marks I really have about him is sometimes I think the vision's a little hot and cold with, okay, when the rushing lane is going to open up, when he needs to put his foot in the ground and go the opposite direction. Sometimes he's a little impatient, a little too, pressing towards the line of scrimmage, needs to be a little bit more reserved and wait for those things to manifest. So, but the ability is there. I can totally see why somebody would bet on him in the first round. And so I think that Denver could absolutely be one of those teams. 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers now on the board. This is where I feel comfortable getting Shedeur Sanders off the board. I'm not convinced that we're going to get more than 2 quarterbacks in the first round on Thursday. I'm really not. And I think it's because Cam Ward's going to go number 1. I don't really think Shedeur is going to go in the top 20. And I think that right here with Pittsburgh is where we start to really think about it. Now, he could go to Pittsburgh, or if he drops even further, you could have teams at the top of the second round like the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns. Those teams could trade back up into the first round if they want to go up and get him. But this is sort of the range that we start to talk about here with him. And to be honest, I wouldn't count on Aaron Rodgers at all. I really wouldn't. I think that you've got to go into next season operating as if he's not going to be on the team. The fact that there's no deal already, it makes me already very nervous about what kind of relationship they would have as quarterback and franchise anyways going into the season. So I'm operating as if you need a starting quarterback day one. And I do think at least Shedeur Sanders is not going to be afraid of the big moments. He's not going to be afraid of the pressure. He has sort of grown up his whole life thinking that this was the ultimate goal. So he's been training for it. I think he's mentally ready for it. And so I could see him being the Pittsburgh Steelers opening day starter in week 1. So we'll have him going off the board here at number 21. 22 is the Chargers. I'm going to have him taking Kenneth Grant. Jim Harbaugh gets a familiar face. Again, I said earlier in the show, he called Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham gifts from the football gods when he was coaching them at Michigan. And so if he has the chance to take another one of those guys, I think he's going to jump on it. It does feel like even beyond the Michigan connection, Colson Loveland, Kenneth Grant, those two are 2 of the most likely picks there for the Los Angeles Chargers, unless they want to get aggressive, right? This is a team that has 10 picks in this draft, and so they could certainly package a couple of those, try to go up a little bit higher in the first round. Again, maybe to get Colson Loveland, maybe to get one of these wide receivers at Tetro McMillan. If the wide receivers start coming off the board, like if Dallas then picks one at number 12, do they feel like they want to go up and get Loveland or Ibuka or Luther Burden or something like that? But with them staying put at number 22, I'll have them take Kenneth Grant. I don't think it can be talked about enough how much losing Poona Ford could hurt this team in run defense with him no longer in the middle. You get to plug in Kenneth Grant and feel a lot better about that situation. Green Bay at number 23, I am going to have them going wide receiver, and I've said this on this show before. Green Bay's wide receiver room could look completely different a year from now. And in fact, Jaden Reed and Malik Heath could be the only two wide receivers that we talk about for Green Bay this year that could still be on the roster in 2026. Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, all those guys could be gone next offseason. And so I think they need a long-term answer no matter what. And I think that even with all those guys still on the roster, Emeka Egbuka is wide receiver one. So I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka here for the Green Bay Packers. I just think that this dude's a stud. And I think that we're kind of bored talking about him, right? We talked about him as a draft prospect 3 years ago. And it's not his fault he had to play behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Jeremiah Smith. I think if he was on basically any other team in the country, he'd be talked about as a focal point and how he helped his team and how he was just a heavy volume guy. And he didn't really need to be that as much, but he was still a major part of why this team won a national championship. And so I think Green Bay could absolutely use him. And I think that his talents make him wide receiver one there in Green Bay going into next year. 24, it's the Minnesota Vikings. They only have 4 picks in this draft. They pick here at 24, and they don't pick again until 97. And so they would have to love a prospect here at 24 to take them. I'm not going to have trades in this mock just because I want it to sort of stay the same, because I want to give you a realistic look at what could happen at every single selection. But I really do believe that Malachi Starks could be one of those players that they just absolutely love. They got a nice player in Josh Metellus from the 6th round who's starting for them at safety. Harrison Smith is back for another year. But long term, I think Malachi Starks could be a building block for their secondary, especially for as long as Brian Flores is their defensive coordinator. He can do so many things for you. He plays in space so well. He's got great ball skills. He can play in the slot. He can play strong safety. He can play single high for you. However aggressive you want to be, I think that Malachi Starks gives you the flexibility to be that. So I think that especially for Flores specifically, that's why I say that I think that Malachi Starks could be one of those players that tempts them enough to not trade back and to stick here at number 24 and make the pick. Ultimately, I do still think they trade back, but I think that this guy could be worthwhile for you here at number 24. The Houston Texans are on the board next. Another team that could potentially trade out. They don't have a ton of picks in this draft, although a couple of trades that they made throughout this offseason do make it a little bit easier. Moving on from Laramie Tunsil, they recouped a couple of picks back when they traded him to the Washington Commanders. I'll have them replace Tunsil here. I'm going to go with Josh Simmons from Ohio State. To me, Josh Simmons had probably the best tackle tape of anybody in the class this past year before he tore his meniscus. And obviously everything there has got to check out, but I haven't really heard anything to the contrary that he wouldn't be ready for minicamp and OTAs and training camp. And if that's the case, man, I think that you're betting on a player who he's got flash to Christian Darrisaw. I mean, he really does. And Darrisaw is one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. The way that this guy moves, I mean, the footwork, the explosiveness, the balance that he has, he can operate behind zone blocking schemes. He can operate between the tackles more, man and gap blocking schemes, those power schemes, just right up the middle. He could do it all for you. And I think what you love about him the most is that balance and that overall athleticism that he has to execute basically any running assignment that you want. And I think it also gives him smooth feet and smooth movements in pass protection. And so if you're going to trade your best pass protector in Laramie Tunsil, you better have a plan to sort of replace him and make sure that you're doing as much as you can to protect your investment in C.J. Stroud. The Rams here at number 26, this is where I will have Jihad Campbell coming off the board simply because I think the value is too damn good for the Rams to pass him up. He has that shoulder injury, he had that torn labrum, which he had to have surgery on, and it might cut his offseason work short. He might not be able to do OTAs and minicamp and training camp. I know Ian Rappaport said earlier today that reports are that he could be ready for training camp and be fine for that, but there's no guarantee. We know how things like that go. I certainly hope so because I think he's a hell of a talent. And I think that for the Los Angeles Rams specifically, they found a gem in undrafted free agent Omar Speights, who played really well last year, but they need a linebacker who could really fly sideline to sideline. I think Omar Speights can be pretty nice between the tackles for you, think he can be very solid. But Jihad Campbell, I mean, he can moonlight as an edge rusher for you. He can play as a will in deep coverage. He likes to cover tight ends up the seam. He can go sideline to sideline and beat running backs to the angle. I mean, Jihad Campbell brings it all. And I think that the Rams would absolutely love a player like that. Baltimore Ravens at 27, I'll have them take Mike Green because, they really need an edge rusher. They need somebody that can contribute this year and then be a long-term staple for them moving forward as a pass rusher. Mike Green was fantastic this past season. Elite pass rush grades from him. Some of the best pass rush tape that we had of any edge rusher, to be honest with you. And when you look at the Ravens, if you're forming a draft strategy, if they don't take edge rusher in round 1, it gets kind of sketchy thinking that they would get the contributing player that they need, even in the second round and beyond. So I think this does need to be the priority. You see there on the tape the explosiveness that Mike Green has. We saw it firsthand. I got to see it firsthand, up close and personal, when I was at the Senior Bowl watching him there. He only needed 2 days to practice to show the NFL exactly what he needed to against higher level competition, because that was a question mark with him, right? You can see some of those numbers on the screen. That was at Marshall. And Marshall's not always playing the best competition every single week. And so there's some concerns. Can he do it in the NFL? And I think that he proved it against some of the best that this draft class had to offer when he was in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to have him going off the board here at 27 to the Baltimore Ravens. 28, the Detroit Lions. They are a team that takes best player available. They're not going to force a need. And the fact that Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas, is still on the board, I think they would take him. In this situation, with the rest of the guys off the board, I think that they would take Matthew Golden versus the rest of the players that are there. Golden had an excellent 2024 season with the Texas Longhorns. He was the best wide receiver that they had on that team. Came over from Houston, and this was, quite frankly, the best year that he had in his career. He showed great savviness as a route runner. He is somebody who reminded me of Stephon Diggs in the way that he was able to create separation deep down the field. He ran a 4.29 40-yard dash, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't see him play at 4.29 speed. But it's nice to know he's got it in there. It's always nice to know that you got a little extra juice, especially if it comes to those situations where you're getting yards after the catch. Ultimately, I think it set up a really good trio of Jameson Williams, Matthew Golden, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you're throwing Tim Patrick in there as well. So I think you feel pretty good about the wide receivers that you have on your team. And even with Ben Johnson gone, you feel good at getting the ball in the hands of one of these playmakers and still scoring a lot of points. 29 is the Washington Commanders. I'm going to have him going Nick Scorton here, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, who I feel like is just getting forgotten in this class. And it's understandable. At Purdue, his tape was so good. Elite pass rush grades, near 20% pass rush whip percentage. I mean, this guy was a monster at Purdue. He was getting into the backfield at will, and he was doing it at almost 270, 280 pounds. What he was listed at. I know he showed up at the combine a little bit lighter, but I think he also lost weight at the combine to be able to test a little bit better and just showcase himself and his flexibility at a little bit lighter of a weight. So I do think he was probably playing closer to 270 when he was playing at Purdue. And man, the tape was excellent. It really was. It was fantastic. And I think that it was a disappointing year this past year, but I don't think Texas A&M really put him in a great place to succeed and just be that prolific pass rusher the way that Purdue did. I think Washington could do that. I think Dan Quinn sees that. He sees the potential there for Nick Scorton. So I'm going to take Scorton off the board here at number 21, 29. 30 is the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to go with cornerback Maxwell Hairston. I'm a little bit lower on Maxwell Hairston, but it feels like the league's a little bit higher on him. I think he is going to be a fringe first-round prospect. Could go in the first round. Maybe he doesn't, but he is right here in that conversation. And if the Buffalo Bills have watched Walter Nolan and Kenneth Grant and those guys from the interior go off the board, even the edge rushers as well, some of the interior guys, or if they wanted to get some depth on the interior offensive line, I don't think they'll go after wide receiver, but corner feels like the spot to hit at the back end of the first round. And if the league's a little bit higher for Hairston, then I think there's a chance he could be the pick here at number 30. He was the talk of the town at the combine with his explosive numbers. Not this past year. This past year he was dealing with injuries, so it was a little more up and down. But the year before, I mean, he was excellent. You see some of those interceptions that he has had throughout his career, playing in that off-zone coverage scheme, sitting back, letting the ball come to him, being a ball hawk, and then returning those a long ways, sometimes even for 6 points. For the defense. And so he is somebody who's got some good ball skills to him. He's got that click and close speed. Does he have the strength to be able to play true man coverage? And is he going to be able to play zone the way that you want him to? Can he play that deep zone? Because often he was asked to play sort of that shallow zone, that cover two, that sort of Tampa two, where the corners were covering that shallow zone. That's what allowed him to really jump on those passes and get the most out of that closing speed. When you're in the NFL, you got to have that deep zone coverage ability as well. Kentucky just didn't ask him to do that as much. Can he do that in their system? If he can, I think he could be on the board for them there at number 30. 31, Kansas City Chiefs. Kelvin Banks Jr. makes it this far. I think he's a home run pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they'd love to get themselves Josh Simmons, but Josh Simmons already off the board at this point. And who knows? Maybe Kelvin Banks Jr. could even be the better pick for them. Banks can play guard. He can play guard next season. Depending on if Kingsley Suamataia is playing good for them at guard, maybe they'll play Kelvin Banks at offensive tackle. If Jalen Moore is playing well at offensive tackle, they could play Kelvin Banks at guard. So that flexibility that he has, I think, would be a dream come true for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think they will force offensive tackle in this upcoming draft. I think defensive line is certainly on the board for them as well. I don't think they draft just any offensive tackle, but with Kelvin Banks making it to them, I do think that he would be their selection here at number 31. That brings the Philadelphia Eagles on the board. Well, as you can see, Kelvin Banks Jr.'s numbers right there. That brings us to our last pick of this mock draft here. It's a player who, man, it felt like he was getting a lot of draft hype around the combine. Feels like it's cooled a little bit, which it's getting a little bit closer to where I have him ranked as a prospect. 32 overall, I'll have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Tyler Booker from Alabama to step right in at offensive guard as Mekhi Becton is no longer on the team. I know they have Tyler Steen, but Tyler Steen's sort of been that swing guard tackle prospect for them as a depth player. I think they'd like to keep him in that role, especially if they can plug in Tyler Booker right there for the rest of that offensive line. It's a perfect scheme for them, I think. Just a starting five of ass kickers, just truly dudes who want to move you off the ball against your will. And that's exactly what Tyler Booker does really well. He could get drafted a little bit higher than this. I think the back end of the first round, the back half of the first round, I should say, somewhere in the 20s, feels like it could be the spot where he goes off the board. But if he makes it to 32, I could absolutely see the Eagles being very interested in him there. So I guess we could recap the whole draft if we want to do that before we get out of here. Again, for the people that might have joined the stream a little bit later. Again, had Cam Ward go number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans, Travis Hunter to the Cleveland Browns at number 2, Abdul Carter to the Giants at 3, Will Campbell to the Patriots at 4, Tet McMillan to the Jags at 5, Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders at 6, Armand Membu to the Jets at 7, Jalen Walker to the Panthers at 8, Mason Graham to the Saints at number 9, Tyler Warren to the Bears at number 10, Shamar Stewart to the Niners at 11, Michael Williams to the Dallas Cowboys at number 12. Nicky Manwari to the Dolphins at 13. Colson Loveland to the Colts at 14. Will Johnson to the Falcons at 15. Jahdae Barron to the Cardinals at 16. And the second half of the draft, I had Walter Nolan go to the Bengals at 17. Gray Zabel to the Seahawks at 18. Donovan Zaraku to the Bucks at 19. Omarion Hampton to the Broncos at 20, Shadur Sanders to the Steelers at 21, Kenneth Grant reuniting with Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers at number 22, Emeka Egbuka as wide receiver 1 for the Packers at number 23, Malachi Starks for the Vikings at 24, Josh Simmons to the Texans at 25, Jahad Campbell to the Rams at 26, Mike Green to the Ravens at 27, Matthew Golden to the Lions at 28, Nick Scorton to the Commanders at 29, Maxwell Hairston to the Bills at 30, Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Chiefs at 31, and then Tyler Booker to the Philadelphia Eagles at 32. That is it. That is my final predictive mock draft before Thursday and things get kicked off here for the 2025 NFL Draft. Really appreciate everybody watching these live streams. They've been an absolute blast to do. If you want to run some more mock drafts and think of the scenarios of what could happen in the 2025 NFL Draft, go over to pff.com. And if you have a PFF Plus subscription, you could run as many mock drafts as you want. And then the best part is, when night 1 is over, we will lock those picks, and then you could do mock draft simulations for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, all the way through. As picks happen, we will lock those picks so you can go through the MDS and actually make selections based off of what has already happened. If you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get 25% off right now using the promo code DRAFT25 over at pff.com. Once again, I am Trevor Sikkema. Thank you guys for so much for watching BR's Draft Board Show presented by Snickers Ice Cream. Enjoy the rest of the week and enjoy the 2025 NFL Draft.